Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. was born in Mogi das Cruzes, Brazil, into a family that understood struggle long before they understood fame. His father, Neymar Sr., had once dreamed of a professional football career of his own, but injuries and circumstance forced him into low-paying jobs that barely kept the family afloat. His mother, Nadine, worked tirelessly to hold their small household together, skipping meals, sacrificing comfort, and stretching every reel to ensure her children had hope where she and her husband had little. When Neymar was still young, the family was involved in a devastating car accident that changed their lives overnight. Their already fragile financial stability collapsed. They lost their possessions. They lost their home. And in those moments of despair, the family learned a cruel truth. Survival would require every ounce of strength they possessed. They moved to São Vicente and then to Praia Grande, sharing cramped spaces with relatives, often unsure what the next month or even the next week would bring. But amid the struggle, there was one source of light: a ball. Neymar wasn't just a child who enjoyed football, he was a child who needed it. The game became his refuge, his distraction from chaos, his escape from a world that felt too heavy for a boy his age. His father recognized something in him immediately: the same dream he once carried, now reborn in someone capable of fulfilling it. Neymar Sr. became more than a parent. He became a mentor, a coach, and the architect of Neymar's belief in himself. Together, they spent endless hours practicing in the narrow alleys of their neighborhood. Neymar learned to dribble in tight spaces because that's all he had. He learned agility because he had to dodge street obstacles. And he learned creativity because joy was something he had to make for himself. But the emotional core of Neymar's childhood wasn't just poverty, it was sacrifice. He watched his father work multiple jobs just to afford bus fare for training. He watched his mother cry silently during nights when bills couldn't be paid. And he vowed, even as a child, that he would change their lives. In a world that expected nothing from him, Neymar learned to expect everything from himself. Those early years didn't just shape his style, they shaped his soul. The flair, the confidence, the audacity he shows on the pitch all come from a boy who learned early that the world wouldn't give him anything unless he fought for it. For Neymar, talent didn't appear gradually. It erupted. Even before he understood the weight of his family's struggle, he understood the ball. From the moment it touched his feet, it became an extension of him. On the narrow streets of Praia Grande, he dribbled with a freedom that felt instinctive, like a language he was born speaking. Neighbors would gather to watch the skinny kid weaving through older boys twice his size. His movements were unpredictable, elastic, almost impossible to defend. He flicked the ball over opponents' heads, tunneled them with mischievous ease, and finished plays with the effortless confidence of someone who didn't yet realize how gifted he truly was. But the moment that changed everything came when Neymar joined a local futsal team. The tight spaces, rapid tempo, and constant pressure shaped him in ways that would later define his professional style. Futsal sharpened his touch, accelerated his decision-making, and amplified his creativity. Coaches were stunned, not just by what he could do, but by what he saw. He predicted plays before they happened. He used space no one else recognized. He moved as if the game were unfolding in slow motion for him alone. By the age of 11, the whispers had begun. This kid is different. This kid is special. This kid might be the next great one. Santos FC scouts soon discovered him, mesmerized by the joy and boldness with which he played. They saw a boy with street-born instincts, futsal-crafted precision, and a spirit untouched by fear. At just 11 years old, he entered the Santos Academy, and from the moment he walked onto the training pitch, the staff knew they had found a generational talent. Neymar wasn't just chasing a dream. Destiny had already begun chasing him. For all of Neymar's early brilliance, the road to greatness wasn't smooth. Behind the dazzling footwork and the unstoppable confidence was a boy learning to carry expectations far heavier than his age. At 13, he faced the first major turning point of his life, a trial with Real Madrid, one of the biggest clubs in the world. He impressed everyone there: the coaches, the players, even the youth directors. For the first time, he felt what it meant to be seen, not just as a talented child, but as a future global star. But then came the heartbreak. His family, struggling financially and fearing instability, decided he was too young to move across the world. Santos made a financial effort to keep him, offering security his family desperately needed. Neymar returned to Brazil, not because he failed, but because life demanded sacrifice. Yet to a teenager chasing dreams, it still felt like rejection. Back at Santos, the pressure intensified. He was no longer just another academy player. He was the kid who almost joined Real Madrid. Expectations skyrocketed. Every match, every training session, every mistake carried weight. And Neymar, still growing physically and emotionally, had to navigate the spotlight before he even reached adulthood. Then came the emotional collapse that shook him deeply. His family again faced financial hardship. Neymar watched his father struggle, watched his mother worry, watched his home tremble under the weight of bills and uncertainty. These moments left scars, reminders that football wasn't just a passion, it was a responsibility. He wasn't playing for fame. He was playing to lift his family, to repay the sacrifices, to change their future. It was in these early setbacks, these quiet internal battles, that Neymar's fire was forged. The boy who shocked street defenders now had to learn to confront doubt, pressure, and fear. And he did, with resilience, with maturity, with a hunger that would soon propel him into the global spotlight. He didn't just play well, he played with audacity. Neymar dribbled as if fear didn't exist. He cut through defenders twice his size. He controlled matches not with strength, but with electricity. Every touch, every feint, every burst of acceleration ignited the stadium. Fans didn't come to watch Santos. They came to watch him. His breakthrough season brought goals, assists, and moments of magic that spread across the world through early YouTube clips. Overnight, Neymar became more than a rising star. He became a phenomenon, a spark of joy in a country that treated football like religion. But the defining moment came in 2010. During a match that would reshape his destiny, Neymar scored a solo goal that left commentators speechless. He drifted past defenders like wind slipping through trees, weaving between challenges with impossible balance, before finishing with a confidence that felt predestined. That goal earned him the FIFA Puskás Award and announced him as one of the most exciting players on earth. Suddenly, Europe couldn't look away. Real Madrid wanted him again. Chelsea called. Barcelona circled. Agents hovered. Headlines exploded. But Neymar stayed. He wasn't finished writing his story in Brazil. Over the next 3 years, he led Santos to trophies, dazzled in the Copa Libertadores, and became the face of Brazilian football. Critics said he was too flashy. Fans said he was the future. And Neymar? He let his game answer everything. Then came the moment that changed everything, his transfer to FC Barcelona in 2013. It wasn't just a signing, it was an earthquake. At 21 years old, Neymar had become the most talked about, most anticipated, and most scrutinized young player on the planet. He was joining Lionel Messi, the greatest player of his generation, forming a partnership that carried monumental expectations. This was no longer a boy from Praia Grande. This was a global superstar taking his place on the biggest stage in world football. His breakthrough wasn't just spectacular, it was historic, and it was only the beginning. When Neymar arrived at Barcelona in 2013, he didn't just join a football club. He stepped into a global empire built on brilliance, pressure, and impossible standards. He was 21 years old, slender, smiling, full of life. The world saw a rising star. Barcelona saw the missing piece in a dynasty, and Lionel Messi, the greatest player of his generation, saw a partner capable of redefining the game. At first, Neymar faced skepticism. Could he adapt? Could he share a stage with Messi? Could he survive in Europe's most demanding environment? It didn't take long for him to answer. Neymar adapted faster than anyone expected. His chemistry with Messi formed instantly. Two South Americans, two geniuses who understood the art of football in the same language. And when Luis Suarez arrived a year later, the world witnessed something historic. MSN, one of the greatest attacking trios ever assembled. Together, they destroyed Europe. Neymar wasn't just a contributor, he was the spark. His dribbling hypnotized defenders. His acceleration turned half chances into goals. His understanding of space and timing became lethal. There were moments when even Messi stepped back, letting Neymar take center stage, recognizing the fire inside the young Brazilian. But the defining chapter of his Barcelona prime came in 2015, the Champions League final. With the match on the line, Neymar delivered the finishing blow, scoring the goal that secured Barcelona's treble. It wasn't just a goal, it was a declaration. Neymar had arrived at the peak of world football, and then came the night that would forever define his power, the 2017 Champions League comeback against PSG, known simply as La Remontada. Barcelona trailed 4-0 from the first leg. The world said it was impossible. The world was wrong. Neymar didn't just play well that night, he took over the match with a ferocity rarely seen in the sport. He scored 2 goals, delivered the decisive assist, and willed Barcelona into one of the greatest comebacks in football history. In that moment, he wasn't Messi's partner. He wasn't a rising star. He was the best player on the planet. But with greatness came a new challenge: identity. Neymar wanted more responsibility, more influence, more space to grow. Living in Messi's shadow was a blessing and a burden. He admired Messi deeply, but he also knew that as long as he stayed in Barcelona, he would never fully become the player he believed he could be. And so, in 2017, Neymar made a decision that shook football's foundations. He left Barcelona for Paris Saint-Germain in a record-breaking transfer. Critics called it reckless. Fans called it betrayal. But Neymar saw it differently. He wasn't running away from Messi. He was chasing his own legacy. In Paris, Neymar became the face of a new project, a symbol of ambition, a global icon. His performances, when healthy, were breathtaking. He led PSG to domestic dominance and carried them to their first-ever Champions League final in 2020, showcasing a maturity, leadership, and brilliance many thought he lacked. This was Neymar at his peak, flamboyant yet focused, joyful yet determined, a player capable of changing matches with a flick, a sprint, a moment of magic. He had finally become the superstar he always believed he would be. But beneath the success, beneath the fame and fortune, beneath the highlight reels and celebrations, a storm was building, because the higher Neymar climbed, the more fragile the world around him became. And soon the battles waiting for him off the pitch would prove far more dangerous than any defender he faced on it. For all the brilliance Neymar displayed at the peak of his career, his journey into the darker chapters of his life didn't come from a single moment. It came from a collision of pressure, expectation, physical pain, and the brutal glare of worldwide scrutiny, forces that grew louder and heavier with each passing year. Neymar wasn't just a footballer anymore. He was a global symbol, a brand, a storyline every newspaper felt entitled to write. And slowly the weight began to crush him. It started with injuries, repeated, untimely, devastating injuries that arrived just when he seemed ready to claim his place as the best player in the world. Each time his form peaked, each time PSG needed him most, something snapped. His ankle, his metatarsal, his confidence. Doctors treated the wounds, but no surgeon could fix the emotional toll of constantly being torn away from the pitch he loved. Then came the noise, the endless criticism, the narratives he couldn't escape. Every foul he suffered was mocked. Every injury was labeled exaggerated. Every celebration was dissected. Every vacation became a headline. Neymar, the joyful kid from Praia Grande, became Neymar, the lightning rod for global criticism, and it consumed him in ways few understood. The darkest period came in 2019, when Neymar faced one of the most serious accusations of his life after a woman alleged misconduct during a trip to Paris. The story exploded across the world. Neymar denied everything. Evidence unfolded publicly. The case was eventually dismissed due to inconsistencies, but the damage to his mental state was done. He broke down live on social media, desperate and exhausted, revealing a man overwhelmed by a narrative he couldn't control. And as the world debated his innocence, Neymar suffered in silence. He wasn't a superstar in that moment. He was a human being drowning under attention he never asked for. But the pressure didn't stop there. At PSG, frustration grew. Missed Champions League opportunities, internal conflicts, booing from his own fans, media pushing the idea that he was no longer worth the investment. The narrative shifted from golden boy to showman to villain, to disappointment. But the deepest wound wasn't professional, it was emotional. Neymar admitted publicly that he had reached a breaking point, confessing that he endured panic attacks, depression, and moments where he felt completely lost. For the first time, the world saw the fragile human beneath the tattoos, the smiles, the celebrations. And then came 2022. At the World Cup, Neymar carried the hopes of an entire nation once again. He delivered moments of magic, including one of the greatest goals of his career against Croatia in the quarterfinal. But Brazil collapsed. Croatia equalized. Brazil were eliminated, and Neymar, devastated, sat alone on the grass with tears streaming down his face. He wasn't crying for the loss of a match. He was crying for the weight he carried, the dream he once promised his father he would fulfill, slipping further away. Soon after, the injuries returned. Public scrutiny intensified. His image fractured. His confidence wavered. By the time he left PSG for Saudi Arabia, the world had already started crafting a new narrative Neymar, the superstar who never reached his full potential. But the truth is more complicated. Neymar didn't fall because he lacked talent or discipline. He fell because he carried a burden no one could see, one too heavy for any one person to bear. And behind the scandals, the criticism, and the heartbreak was a man fighting to keep his dream alive. For Neymar, the idea of a comeback was never about silencing critics or reclaiming headlines. It was about rediscovering the joy he felt as a child, the spark that made him fall in love with the game long before fame twisted it into something heavier. And as he moved into the later stages of his career, the world witnessed a different version of the Brazilian superstar, one shaped not by ego, but by perspective, humility, and the long, painful lessons of experience. Leaving PSG for a new chapter in Saudi Arabia marked a turning point. Many called it the end, but Neymar didn't see it that way. For the first time in years, he stepped away from the suffocating pressure of Champions League expectations, away from the constant comparisons to Messi and Ronaldo, and away from the scrutiny that had fractured his joy. He embraced a fresh start, a chance to rebuild not just his reputation, but his relationship with the sport that raised him. In those early months, Neymar showed flashes of his old brilliance, flicks, feints, passes threaded through impossible gaps. But more importantly, he played with something the world hadn't seen in years: freedom. He smiled more. He interacted naturally with teammates. He looked like a man reclaiming control of his narrative. But even in this new chapter, adversity followed. A devastating ACL injury struck just as he was beginning to regain momentum, sidelining him yet again. For many players, this would have been the final blow. Another setback, another derailment, another chapter of what could have been. But Neymar's response revealed who he had become. Instead of collapsing under frustration, he embraced the rehabilitation process with patience and maturity. He opened up about mental health. He spent more time with family, grounding himself in the simplicity and warmth that fame had often taken away. And he began talking publicly about fatherhood, legacy, and gratitude, all signs of a man shifting towards something deeper than football. His comeback wasn't about explosive goals or viral highlights. It was about resilience, growth, acceptance. Neymar began to rebuild himself, not as the next Pelé, not as the savior of Brazil, not as the global brand millions projected onto him, but as Neymar da Silva Santos Jr., the kid from Praia Grande who once found joy in a street ball and wanted nothing more than to lift his family out of hardship. And in that rediscovery, he found something far more valuable than applause piece. His final chapter isn't finished, but for the first time, Neymar looks ready to write it on his own terms. Today, Neymar Jr. stands as one of the most polarizing, misunderstood, and undeniably talented players of his generation. To some, he is the entertainer, the magician who brought joy back into modern football. To others, he is the enigma, the superstar whose career was as brilliant as it was turbulent. But to millions, especially in Brazil, Neymar remains something far more personal, a symbol of hope, a reminder that beauty can emerge from hardship, and that dreams can rise even from the narrow alleys of Praia Grande. Even now, in the later chapters of his career, his influence is everywhere. Young players mimic his feints, street footballers study his dribbling, Social media platforms overflow with highlights that feel almost unreal in their creativity. Neymar didn't just play the game, he reshaped how the world experienced it. And beyond the pitch, his legacy is evolving. He has become a voice for mental health, a figure of vulnerability in a sport that often demands invincibility. He has openly shared his struggles, his anxieties, his fears, showing a generation of athletes that it is possible to be extraordinary and still human. To Brazil, he remains the bridge between eras, the heir to Pele's magic, the companion to Ronaldo's brilliance, the spark that reignited belief in a new generation. Whether or not he ever achieves the World Cup dream he once promised his family, his impact on the sport is undeniable. Neymar's legacy isn't defined by what he didn't achieve. It's defined by the joy he gave, the artistry he created, and the millions he inspired. In the end, his story reminds us of something powerful. Greatness isn't always measured in trophies. It's measured in the hearts you touch along the way,